Welcome to Pressure Points. Our topic is Tesla earnings. And as of this recording, which is about 15 minutes after the earnings call ended, shares are down 4.4%. That is near session low. When the numbers initially came out, they were down about 3%, but drifted more or less lower on two topics. The first step down when the numbers came out was related to margins, gross margins on automotive, and then separately the Capex commentary. So we'll start the episode talking about those two, and then we'll move into all the other key topics because there are, of course, many of those. But from the top, we'll start with that initial drop was related to the automotive gross margins ex credits was 16.3%. Now that number compares to 19.2% in the previous quarter. Now, if you'd go and make the adjustment for this 230 million in one-time benefit they had in the March quarter, if you kind of adjust that out, you'd have gotten to a number of probably right around 18%, something like that. So again, the street was at 18.5%, was expecting kind of a little bit of a step up when you make that after you make that adjustment, and because the volumes were so strong in the September quarter. But in fact, instead of getting to 18 to 18.5, we got 16.3. The reasons were a combination of ASPs dipped a little bit. It's unclear whether that was promotional activity or a mix shift. And then separately, cost of goods was up 0.5%. Sometimes in this case, the details really don't matter. What matters is the big picture, is that over the past 4 quarters, automotive gross margins have been increasing, kind of going from 12, 13% up to, if you adjust out that one-time benefit, call it 18%, 18.5%. So there has been this trajectory up that essentially got disrupted, and that's a little bit jarring for investors. As far as going forward, the commentary is that they continue to be supply constrained, but ultimately, I think you should kind of think of margins in this 16.5 to 17.5 range here. So that was the profitability question. Nothing really significant long term. There's no like major red flags here. It's just that we've got a lot of bumpiness in the gross margins, and that's kind of part of growing a business as they are making some trade-offs in terms of delivery growth versus profitability. The second topic related to Capex. This falls in the category of thinking big picture about where they're going. Of course, last quarter, when they announced that they're going to do 25 billion in Capex in calendar 26 versus their previously commentary of 20 billion, when that happened, shares traded off almost 3% in after hours. So we knew going into this call that that was going to be a hot button for investors. And while they didn't give specifics around it, Elon talked about this being a massive year for Capex. And when you hear the word massive, you think massive. And also you think, well, what does that mean for next year? And the way the setup was is that the street was looking for just over 25 billion in Capex for calendar 26 and looking for 21 billion in calendar 27. So when you think about the massive kind of build out, that means that probably next year's number is more like 25 billion. I'm always surprised at why people get so concerned about this. I think investment in Capex is a good thing, especially when you have a leadership position like Tesla. And the second to last question on the call, Elon had a chance to give some more of his philosophy around Capex, which I think was helpful. And he talked about the trade-off between capital efficiency and growth. And ultimately, he said that what's most important is sometimes not to be as capital efficient as possible in the front end because you gain time. And gaining time ultimately would increase the NPV of any project. And they've got a lot of projects going on. They're all factory related, everything from Terafab to Robotaxi production to the semi. So they are continuing to expand in a lot of ways. Solar is another piece that they had mentioned. But that idea that Elon's okay with giving up a little bit on the capital efficiency in the near term because it's better for the long-term NPV should be noted by Tesla investors. And I think what that means is we're probably going to see a little bit higher Capex number. And in the grand scheme of things, what this Capex ultimately means is they're going to go into a little bit of a cash burn position. So their cash is, I haven't seen the number at the end of June, but it's probably right around 30-ish billion. And you could see it kind of drifting to 20 billion over the next year, 2 years, through the end of 2027 as they continue to make these investments. Still plenty of dough to keep growing what they're doing, but that's the kind of the CapEx piece. Kind of moving down the ledger here, we're going to shift outside of the pressure points and into just other topics. And one thing that caught my attention is one of the first things Elon said on the call is them kind of investing in their core business. And that, of course, is the car business. And then the CFO followed up by saying that their backlog for vehicles is the best since the middle of 2023. That would have been in the summer of, and this EV winter we've had, that was kind of the glory days back in mid 2023. So really bullish, I think, comments in terms of deliveries. What that means is the street's looking for a minus 8% delivery in the September quarter, tough comp based on the sunsetting of the US tax credit. But that probably ultimately they're going to do flattish, would be my guess. And then looking to the December quarter, the street's looking for plus 10% off a very easy comp. And it's probably more like 10 to 15% growth. But this concept that the delivery numbers don't matter, that's been a narrative around the stock. I understand that there are other things that are more important than deliveries, but deliveries do still matter because more vehicles on the road is more training for FSD, which benefits Robotaxi. And then, of course, you have more benefit to what selling FSD, which gets us to our next topic. And I think one of the jewels in this report was related to FSD. They said that the growth in FSD subscriptions grew at 55% year over year, compared to 51% in the March quarter. So we saw a little bit of an acceleration on that. They talked about the adoption of paid subs being 55% in the US, and that is a huge number. And to put that into perspective, they historically have not broken out what the growth or what the attach rate was historically. But myself and most people had thought of that, if we look back in 2024, to be a sub 10% attach rate. Now, they had a slightly different model. You could pay up front. You could also pay on a monthly basis, but it was a very low attach rate. So this ramp in attach rate, I think, is just closely related to the improvements in FSD. And if we kind of pull this even forward and say how much more adoption can happen, I think a conservative estimate is that they have 20% adoption rate basically of across globally of FSD. Now, maybe that number is a little bit lower, but just a sense, if you look at the number of vehicles that are hardware 3 or better, I think are really the use case. So they've got, call it 2 million or so total FSD subscriptions. And so they still have a lot of room to grow that piece. And they've got approval in the Netherlands. They're still waiting for EU and China, but there's still levers to go. So I was very encouraged by that FSD numbers, both the growth rate and how quickly people are starting to adopt it relative to how they thought about this a couple of years ago. Next, we'll talk about Robotaxi rollout. And in the deck, the investor deck, they shifted from being pilot production when they reported the March quarter to just production. Now, I don't know how many units that is, but this is something I was dead wrong on. I'd expected them to kind of push out that production number into early 2027. They had said late this year, but I guess officially they are in kind of that piece of, this is for Cybercab, for the Cybercab production. They now are in that ramp. They're starting to do more production. And so this, of course, plays into what's going on with Robotaxi. So as far as Robotaxi, we didn't get a definitive, this is how many new cities we can have. There's still a couple, I think it's Phoenix and Houston are kind of orbiting or out there, that they're two of them that they've talked about in the past that still need to land. But Ashok, who runs AI, he's basically the head of their AI software, talked a little bit about kind of the pace of the rollout. And we got some nice nuggets here. First is they've had 380,000 total unsupervised miles. Now, to put that into perspective, that's probably about 20 or so % of total miles driven by Robotaxi. So it's still a smaller number. But they also emphasize, of course, no incidences. And that's been Elon's mantra for the past several quarters, is we just can't mess anything up. That would be the end of Robotaxi. So they are going slow. And to put slow into perspective, if you look at the number of miles that Robotaxi is driving unsupervised versus Waymo, it's probably almost 99 times more on Waymo. I mean, it is a night and day number. But that's okay because they're getting it right. And as Elon talked about, the biggest limiting factor around rolling Robotaxi out to more cities is the March of Nines. March of Nines is the concept that what is the safety level where people can get comfortable at really endorsing this and them aggressively rolling this out? Is it 99.9% safe, or do you need 99.99999%? So that's the March of Nines. Elon flagged it. What's he saying? He's saying he still doesn't feel comfortable at at the safety factor. The fact that they have 380,000 miles, that's a sign that they're still not feeling comfortable about that. So they're going slow. That's the right call. I think the piece that started to move the stock higher in after hours when Ashok said that at some point we can actually roll out entire states at one time, which kind of gets to this idea that they can effectively almost like carpet bomb or just really get a hard punch against Waymo when the time is right, where they feel that they've got that safety threshold marked. So Robotaxi, I don't know how many cities are going to come in the next few months. My guess is it's still going to be relatively slow. And kind of one piece on that relatively slow is they had a slide in the deck, the shareholder deck, about Robotaxi cumulative miles driven. And it only grew 750,000 in the June quarter. And that compares to 1 million miles that were added. They didn't break this out, but you can kind of infer it from the chart. About 1 million miles in the March quarter. And so they've added, call it 3 or 4 cities during that time, or at least in the June quarter, they had 2 more cities. They added 2 more cities, and yet we saw a decline in cumulative miles driven. And so what that means is they're still being slow. They're still testing. I'm okay with that. We don't need the vertical growth yet, but they're doing the right thing by taking it slow. And I think we still can, investors can rest well, knowing that we will see a breakout in Robotaxi miles driven. Next up, in terms of Optimus, they basically reiterated what they've said all along. Elon has said, really not much there. This is going to be their biggest product eventually, and there's a lot of new parts, which make it hard to really ramp up manufacturing. This allows, just kind of sits closely in the toy department. And finally, well, not in the toy department, I don't know what department this is, like the water cooler department, is the topic of, does SpaceX-Tesla combination make sense, came up on the call. And to my surprise, Elon began to entertain the question, and then he kind of handed it off to legal. But then he took the mic back and started to talk about the benefits that both of these companies bring to each other. He talked about Starlink and the use in Robotaxi and these connectivity Bermuda triangles he described, where Robotaxi doesn't work, and the benefit of having Starlink is you don't have that. And he said there are many other kind of benefits to it. And I thought to myself, there's no reason why they should even let this question be asked, number one. Number two is that not only did Elon say at the first there's benefits, the companies benefit each other and have a great relationship, he also took that mic back. And so I would put the odds that these two combine at 90% today over the next few years. If you're going to ask me yesterday, I would say it was 80%. Now the question, which company who acquires who here, is just a straight merger, because the market caps with what's happened with SpaceX more recently are getting very close to each other. I'll kind of check it out here. Yeah, we basically have, I think, Tesla at like a 1.2, and I think SpaceX at a 1.4, 1.5 trillion dollar market cap. It's going to happen, I'll say, within the next 3 years, and I think it's going to be a great combination. Overall, I think that all the big picture, all the most important parts are slowly moving in the right direction, and the company is still so uniquely positioned around everything physical AI. I'm still optimistic about where this company is a year, 2, 3 years down the road. On behalf of Pressure Points, I'm Gene. Bye for now.